Great.
All right, so hi everyone. Welcome to tonight's virtual event with Brookline Booksmith featuring Sophie Kinsella and her book, Love Your Life, in conversation with Elin Hilderbrand. My name is Bree, and I am the Assistant Events Director at Brookline Booksmith in Brookline, Mass. If you're familiar with our store, welcome back. And if this is your first time hearing about us, welcome. We're very happy to have you join our community this evening. And we appreciate your support of the authors and independent bookstores through your purchases and attendance to events like this. The chat and question box are open for you to use throughout the event. Remember to set your chat to all panelists and attendees so you can talk to one another. And please drop your questions in the Q&A box. The chat can move kind of fast, so they can get lost if you leave the questions in there. Please note that Brookline Booksmith has a strict policy against abusive behavior and language, and at our discretion, any attendee can be removed from an event for partaking in such behavior. Okay, so on to the fun stuff. Elin Hilderbrand spent her first summer on Nantucket Island in 1993 and has lived there year-round for 26 years. She's a mother of 3, an enthusiastic home cook, and a 6-year breast cancer survivor, and the author of 26 novels, including Summer of '69, 28 Summers, and Troubles in Paradise. Sophie Kinsella is the author of the best-selling Shopaholic series, as well as the novels Can You Keep a Secret, The Undomestic Goddess, Remember Me, 20s Girl, I've Got Your Number, Wedding Night, My Not So Perfect Life, Surprise Me, and I Owe You One. She lives in London. Tonight, we'll be talking about Love Your Life. And just a quick synopsis, Ava thinks love should be found in the real world. She believes in feelings, not algorithms. Following a breakup, she puts love on hold and escapes to the remote writer's retreat in coastal Italy. At the retreat, no one uses any real names or any personal information. When they're joined by few members of the canceled martial arts retreat next door, Ava, now Aria, meets a man who seems too good to be true. And I don't know about anybody else, but the weather here in Boston's pretty bad tonight, so this is exactly the book I want to be talking about. It's a pleasure to have them here with us. So welcome, Sophie Kinsella and Elin Hilderbrand.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. This is kind of a magic that I can do an event in the US right here from England. It's really exciting to be here. Thank you. And thank you, Elin, for coming to chat. This is so cool. I've just been reading 28 Summers and loving it. And like I was saying before we actually came on officially, all I can say to my husband right now is, why do we not live in Nantucket? We've made a huge mistake. We live in the wrong place.
It's so great to be here. Thank you for asking me. And we're going to talk about Love Your Life, which I finished today. It is absolutely magnificent. And you guys are all going to love it, especially my diehard Sophie fans. So let's start. Sophie, talk to me about how you came up with the idea for Ava and Matt, Dutch/Matt. What the inspiration for this book was?
Well, it really came out of them, like you just heard in the synopsis. Ava is a true romantic, and I'm fascinated by how do we meet and how do we make it work, but the two are very different things. And I have quite a romantic streak to me. I love the idea that your eyes meet and you have a kind of chemistry and there's something between you and your instincts kick in and you just know it's the person for you. But at the same time, I realize that to make a relationship work, it's not just about that initial chemistry. It's about a whole load of other stuff in your life. And you know that expression, love me, love my dog? Well, that was a kind of starting point for the book. I imagined two people meeting in a bubble. And so I created a bubble for them in this holiday. And I created a situation where they're going to meet and not know anything about each other. They're going to fall in love. They're going to be in this intoxicating whirlwind. It's going to be perfect. And then they're going to get back to reality and boom, they're going to start learning about each other's lives. Because when you get together with someone, it's not just them and their pretty face and their, great chemistry in bed. It's their friends, their taste in food, their weird habits that you never noticed before, their apartment. And so there's this cascade of learning about each other's lives, dealing with the reality, and then thinking, oh, wow, you know, I love you so much. I know I love you, but can I love your life? And that was really the idea for the book.
Right. Absolutely. I absolutely love that premise. So there are, Ava and Matt are quite different. Oh, they couldn't be more different. Let me ask you this question. Do you think that, I mean, we're going to play a little bit of like, you know, love advice here. Do you think it's better when a couple has everything in common, or they're complete opposites?
I think everything in moderation. You know, do you want to be a complete cookie cutter, identikit partner? Does that give you anything to talk about, really, if you agree wholeheartedly 100% on everything? On the other hand, if you really can't agree on anything, how are you ever going to meet? And I think probably the key is to acknowledge where you differ. And embrace the differences, but, you know, have enough to be connecting you in the first place. I mean, in the book, one stumbling block between our happy couple is art and the aesthetic of their apartments. And one has one style and one has another style, and you could say they are chalk and cheese. They kind of are. They like such different styles. On the other hand, they both care about their environments. So there is common ground, and they're just going to have to learn to accept and respect each other's different points of view. But I think, you know, I thought a lot about love writing this book. And, you know, you have to look at, I think, at the person that you're with and think, well, you know, I'm going to embrace parts of your life that I'm not comfortable with. I'm going to learn how to compromise. I'm going to cherish those things that we absolutely have 100% in common. But maybe I'm also going to challenge you in the bits of your life that I find problematic for you. You know, if you're not living your best life, maybe we can talk about that. So there's comedy in this book, you know, light-hearted differences of opinion and kind of farce when it all goes wrong. But I think there's also more of a kind of deeper looking at what it really means to love somebody. It's not just accepting everything in their life, because they might have stuff in their life which is not healthy for them, and somebody who loves them will challenge them on that.
I definitely agree. And at some point, I don't want to give any of the plot away, but in the beginning, I was like, this is never going to work. This is never going to work. Like, any progressively worse. And I'm like, she should just go home. She should just go home. And I don't want to say anything about how it progresses, but it's very funny. Just personally, like, so I was married for 18 years. I'm now divorced. My ex-husband and I are great friends. We're much better friends now, much better, like excellent, like co-parents and friends now. But we were the kind of people where we were yin and yang. Like, he knew everything that I didn't know, and I knew everything that he didn't know. And so for 18 years, it was like we were like kind of like a perfect couple, because together, like the two of us sort of had the whole thing covered. But ultimately, like, we just didn't have enough, like, we didn't enjoy enough of the same things. And now I'm with somebody else and we have a lot more in common, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like, we like to do the same things, and things are much smoother. But so that question has always interested me. I feel good about my kids because they are getting like two totally different perspectives from mom and dad. So that's so fun. Do you mind if I ask you how you met your husband?
Absolutely. Well, so I thought about that a lot in the light of this book, because on the one hand, we already had a lot in common. We met at college and we met through music. So we already kind of had that in common, same college, same interests. We weren't studying the same subject, but we knew people in common, and we met as friends to begin with. But I will say that I never, I sort of looked at him and thought, oh, but I was with somebody else at the time. And so it wasn't like an instant getting together. But then I heard him sing. He became a singer after college, and I'd never heard him sing. And I heard him sing, and it was like, boom, oh, wow, okay. And I saw him completely differently, and was suddenly kind of like, oh, okay, I'm really quite interested in this guy. And that was not anything you put on a profile. It was nothing to do with compatibility or interest. It was like literally the sound of his voice just kind of resonated, and that was pure instinct. That was like, I relate to this voice. It does something to me, and I feel I can always tell his personality through his voice. So I find that interesting about myself, because that is definitely what tipped the balance. And that was not that you'd put in an algorithm. That was like a chemistry thing. So it was like a mixture, and maybe that's the perfect combo.
Yeah, that is such a great story. Now, of course, I want to hear your husband sing.
You'll be like, what? No, I don't get this at all.
Amazing. So what do you think about the new, I mean, I'm calling it new, it's probably been a decade already, about people meeting online, people meeting in America, Match.com, Tinder. Like, why do you think that's appealing?
Well, I think look at us. We do everything online now. I mean, I think it's just the way the world has gone. So I think it still fulfills all the same roles that in the old days, what did you do? You went to a dance, I mean, back in the day, you had one town and you had a few young people, and their parents would kind of trot them out and they would all meet each other. And there probably the groundwork had already been done that we now do online, which is, details. Where do you live? What's your job? Exchanging kind of the facts. And then I think there's always that chemistry bit. And I mean, I'm not online dating myself. I'm married. I need to make this clear. But I've done a lot of research. I've spoken to friends and I've kind of found out about it. And what's so funny is that you still have that kind of eyes meet across a crowded room, but you're on a date. And it's like that bit comes second. So perhaps back in the day, you went to a bar, your eyes met, you felt the little sizzle, you pursued it, and then you found out the details. Well, now we've reversed that. We find out the details, we go to the bar, and we wait to see if the sizzle is there. And so I think it's sometimes not the most efficient process, because the number of girlfriends I've had that they've emailed, they've texted, it all seems really promising, and then they get to the bar and they see the guy and they just know instantly, no, not going to work. There's no sizzle. So I think that is a slight disadvantage. You don't get the sizzle necessarily through the screen. You don't know if it's there or not. On the other hand, you are able to find that you're compatible in this way and that way, and that saves a lot of heartache, because how many of us have fallen for the sizzle and then found that beneath that was like a no good relationship. So what can I say? Love is hard. We're just doing it in the most appropriate way for this age.
Love is hard. But I do think like the sizzle is the thing that you like. In your novel you talk about deal breakers, and I think everybody's deal breaker is if there's no sizzle. So there has to be sizzle. In fact, I love this term and I'm going to start using it. There has to be sizzle. Otherwise, the whole thing isn't going to work. So in fact, the old-fashioned way is more efficient, because at least that the base attraction is there. So anyway, I'm going to vote for the old-fashioned way. Is meeting in a bar. Okay, so let's go back. I want to go back for people who don't know you quite as well as some, to go back to the beginning of your writing career. You wrote under your real name, which is Madeline Wicksham. You wrote 5 novels?
Yeah, I think it was 7 in the end. It was quite a lot.
And then so tell me like how you got started doing that, and then how you made the switch, and like what happened and that whole exciting story.
Well, it's so funny. I mean, now I've been Sophie as a writing personality for so long, but yeah, you're right. So I started writing under my real name. Really, the first thing I started writing was articles about pensions. This was because I wanted to get into journalism, and I applied for every single job I could think of, and the only interview I got was on Pensions World, the magazine about pensions. So I was writing these really dry articles and thinking, well, I love words and I love creating a kind of a narrative, but really pensions, not so much. So I decided to try and write a novel, which I did kind of in my spare time on the train and, just fitting it in, and realized that I love writing fiction. And I published several of these novels under the name Madeline Wickham. And they were contemporary, and they were kind of funny, but sort of dramas really, and slightly more serious than what I'm doing now. And I did them for a while. And then I had the idea to write a book about a shopaholic. And it kind of came to me, boom, this character. And at the same time, a new voice kind of came to me. And I think that when I started writing, I'm sure you've had this, I was quite young when I started writing. I was 24. And I didn't want to write the autobiographical first novel where you just write about being 24 and just write exactly what you're doing. And turn it into a novel. So I kind of went the other way, and I wrote about people in their 40s with different issues, and I'm a writer, I can imagine, I don't just have to write about myself, so I had gone that way, and then I was a bit older, and I was a bit more relaxed and didn't have so much to prove, and I thought, okay, I'm actually going to write now the confessional first-person novel about being a financial journalist and spending too much money and going shopping at lunchtime. And so it felt like a new me. It was quite honest, quite silly. Some jokes I honestly thought, is anyone else going to get this? Is this just me? This is quite revealing. So I had a few qualms as I wrote this book, but I just loved the character, and I loved the talking about shopping in a way that I hadn't really seen done before, which seemed to me nuts, because we all talked about shopping, me and my girlfriends, and we got in trouble and we made mistakes, and it was all quite funny. So I wrote it, but I didn't really want to go to my publishers and say, well, I've been doing this kind of book, but I thought I'd write a book about shopping. What do you think? I just, I'm hopeless at pitching anyway, and I didn't know if they'd like it, and it felt like a new me. So I submitted it under a pseudonym. So that way they could take it or leave it. Everybody kept their dignity. They didn't have to publish it. So I chose my middle name and my mother's maiden name, and that made Sophie Kinsella, and that sounded really nice to me. So I sent it in, and only one person knew it was me, and they liked it and they took it, and I've stayed as Sophie. That was the kind of a new start for me. It was kind of amazing.
Oh, that's such a great story. And then what did they do when they found out it was you?
Oh, it was quite funny. I tell you what was really funny. You'll relate to this. So I'd actually been out for drinks with I had two editors at the publisher, and we'd been out for drinks the night before because I had been celebrating a different book, a Madeline Wickham book called Cocktails for Three. We'd been out for cocktails, and the next morning, boom, this manuscript arrives. And one of my editors, she said, well, I would say it's Maddie. That's what, they call me, Madeline, short for, I would say it was her, but you know what? We had drinks all last night, and she didn't say a word, and she wouldn't be able to keep that kind of secret, so it can't be her.
That's so funny.
I was totally Scooby-Doo. Ha-ha, behind the mask, it was me all along. It was good fun, actually, the whole pseudonym thing, and we didn't reveal it to the book trade for a long time. Nobody knew. I even had my first author photo as Sophie Kinsella taken from behind, so nobody could see my face. It was all, mysterious. It was a fun thing to do. And as an author, you can do this and you can reinvent yourself. It's a good thing that you can do. It's like liberating.
Right, absolutely. So, and that was really, would you say that was really the book that sort of took off in the United States? Was the first Shopaholic book?
Yes, I would say so. I mean, I had been published in the States before. I mean, the Shopaholic just took off like wildfire. It was kind of incredible. I had not expected it because I thought it was quite a kind of specific local book. It was about a girl in Southwest London with an overdraft. And I thought other girls in Southwest London with overdrafts might read it and relate. And I had no idea that there were people all over the world who would relate to Becky and would tell me that they are Becky. I had so many people say, oh, you must have read my diaries. How did you know it's me? Or if it's not them, it's their best friend. Or, so that was amazing and a very joyous thing to write something that kind of people who are living in different cultures and speak different languages, they relate even so. It's kind of a wonderful thing.
That is pretty amazing. So then the movie came out. So can you talk a little bit about how the movie came about, and like, were you nervous? Like, were you worried they were going to take your baby and, change it? Or
it's a funny process. I mean, as you'll know, we're all very protective of our creations, but I think when you sell movie rights, you have to be kind of pragmatic and understand that this is not going to be exactly the story. I think when you sort of first imagine your own book on the screen, I certainly just thought, well, they could put page 1 and then they could put page 2 and on it will go. And why can't they just put every line and every joke and every scene in? And then you realize that would take 8 hours and would be a very bad movie. And so I think I learned that it's a different art form. It was a different take on the book. For a start, they mixed up the first 2 Shopaholic books to make one movie, so the plot changed. And, but I mean, in terms of a kind of joyous, slightly surreal experience, seeing your characters come to life, seeing this kind of skill of comedy, and just as personally, kind of the excitement of, filming in New York and the costumes, the wardrobe, it was like goosebumps. It was quite amazing. And I think the film is so funny. Isla Fisher is a very talented comedic actress, and it was amazing to watch her working, and she's physically so funny as well as, everything else.
It was absolutely perfect. Well, I'm so glad that because it can go, I think it can go the other way too, but it was like definitely a success in your case, and so entertaining and so escapism. And I guess, I mean, I want to talk to you a little bit about how you view your novels within literature. Like, how much do you enjoy, or what kind of gratification do you get from writing escapist novels? Very, very important.
I could not agree more. And it's interesting. I mean, I think as I've done this over the years, and it's been a lot of years now, I've realized that what really, really gets to me and motivates me is when I meet readers, whether it's online or, in the flesh, and they tell me that something I've written has helped them escape, and often escape a difficult time. And for me, honestly, it's like I go out, I meet a reader who will say something like, she was ill and this helped to distract, in hospital, in the waiting room, waiting for test results, and I read your book, it made me laugh. And just for a moment, I was out of that painful place. I was in a happier place. And do you know what? That kind of propels me through the next year of writing. It inspires me. And that's why I do it, is for that incredibly direct, I find it a very intimate connection, author to reader. I think particularly in my case, I write first person. I write right in the thoughts of my heroines, and I think that my readers kind of really connect. And I think half the time they think that's me, and it kind of half is me, actually. I put a lot of myself into my heroines. And so when we meet, it's almost as if we've already met, because we have friends in common, except they're fictitious friends. And I think that, if you can make somebody's life happier, then I think that is a noble pursuit, and so I think kudos to anyone who can write, and write back to you for what you do. If you can make someone's day a bit more sunshiny, which you do, then I think that's a good thing to do. It's just good.
Yeah, I mean, I get asked a lot about writing, like, how do I feel about being called like the queen of the beach read, and does that bother me? And my answer is very similar to yours, which is, you're giving people the best part of their day. What else what other goals do you have than, and just like you said, like women who are in the chemo chair I've had women who are like with their husbands who are very sick, or, oh my gosh, I had a girl who had miscarried 5 times, and, she just kept reading the books and they just kept her, on track. And you can't ask for a more noble, I think, pursuit than giving people an escape. And Sophie, especially today, right? In the United States, we're having an election. It's very tense. And we're all in the middle of a pandemic. And so that's why I feel like Love Your Life is exactly what we need, just something just to make us feel, giggle and feel happy. And so I definitely feel you on that. I want to ask about your work process. How does a book go from you thinking up the idea to here it is?
I know, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, oh, I have one too. Isn't it lovely? I have to say, I only just got this through the mail and I absolutely love it. It's gorgeous. And it does seem like kind of magic. It was just an idea in my head, and then it was a few scribbled notes, and then it was, I plan books obsessively. I love to plan. I love plot. It makes me happy. I'm a bit of a plot geek, so I'll spend weeks thinking about the plot before I sit down to write. And I have so many different systems. So I have file cards which I put on the wall, and I can stand back, I can look at my plot and move it around. But that's not my only system, because I'm too kind of like scattergun to just have one system. So I also dictate notes into my phone. I also write scribbly notes here and there around the house. I kind of have files going on the computer. I have a million different ways to try to get this plot wrangled into shape. But for me, I really want to know what my roadmap is before I sit down and write. So I think really hard and plan really hard, and I try not to pressure myself to start writing. And my other thing is that I'm a bit superstitious. I won't start a book until I know what the first line is. So I don't sit down at a blank computer and write, chapter 1.
Yeah.
No pressure. What do I do? I don't do that. I walk around. I'll go into coffee shops and I'll sit and I'll think, and I wait until I know what the first line is. It's like a psychological thing. And then I go to my computer and I sit down and I turn it on. I go chapter 1, whatever it is. And I'm like, oh, great, I've started. And the pressure is slightly off. I've got a sentence. And if you have one sentence, then you can add some sentences, and you're going somewhere. And it takes shape. I mean, I'm sure it's the same for you. Sometimes it goes swimmingly, sometimes it grinds to a halt, sometimes I can't think why I started this stupid book in the first place. I don't know why I'm a writer. I hate all my characters. The whole thing seems like a big old mess, generally around chapter 10, that would be. And then you kind of get through that, and then finishing is just so exciting. And then into editing, and then into, for me, just seeing the cover is always so exciting, because someone's brought your image, your characters to life, and turned it into a visual image. And I'm very untalented visually, so I'm always in great admiration of everything that they do. And then it's on to the next one.
Right. So my question is, and I think probably a lot of people have this question, when it comes to a grinding halt, like when you get to what I call the nebulous middle, right? You're at chapter 10 and you don't know where to go next. What do you do? I mean, that's what I think a lot of people put their novels into drawers to revisit, never. And so how do you move on?
Yes. Yes. Novel in the drawer. Bad. I mean, the other temptation is to think, I knew this idea wasn't my best idea. I know what I'll do. I'll write that other book, and that will be just so much easier. That other idea I've got. And then you'll get to chapter 10 of that book, and that will go in the drawer. I find you have to step away. You have to not sit and stare at it obsessively, hoping to find the answer within the words that you've written, but you have to tear yourself away. And I find walking helpful, talking it through. So I talk like all my books through with my husband. So I'm lucky I have a sounding board, and I'll go, right, problem, or there's a plot hole, or it's kind of lost momentum. I find margaritas very helpful at this stage. They I don't know why, they just help the creative process. I don't know what they put in them. Or sometimes they add to those kind of moments of clarity, which the next day you realize was a moment of nonsense. But that's what I do. And I think that the worst thing is to sort of feel like, I have to get this done by tonight, or else. You have to just give yourself the space. I think that's what experience has given me. Is the feeling like this will work itself out. You know, have faith, be patient, it will. And I think that helps me to think, well, I'll just take this time and space that I need to make it work properly, because that's much better than plowing on when your heart isn't in it, or you know that you're missing something, or it isn't the best it could be. It's better just to say, right, come on, it's fine, we'll take some time and we'll crack this.
Right. I think that's great advice. Actually, what I always do is I always go back. I will take a little bit of time, but I always go back to the beginning. So I'll print the whole novel to where I have it, and I'll read it from the beginning. And a lot of times, like, you've left yourself breadcrumbs, and you could, I'm going to follow this thread, and and you sort of ride the wave, or that's what I do, ride the wave that way. But it is a legitimate concern to get to a spot where you don't know what's going to happen next, and it doesn't feel good. And do you have to edit it twice? Sophie, do you have to edit it for your British publisher, and then again for your American publisher, or not?
I have done in the past, but actually now what's happening is that my two editors are giving me notes at the same time, and they talk to each other. I mean, we have a lovely team going on, and so what's great is I'm getting insights from both sides. And like the edit on Love Your Life they both felt exactly the same way. They had exactly the same notes. So, I mean, it was just great because, I could use both sets of wisdom. We do separate copy edits, and that can be quite funny with the American language being slightly different. And sometimes I'll write things and people have got no idea what I meant. So,
right. Like, for example,
adjusted.
And you say you found something in the skip. I'm looking at that. I'm like, what is that? What is the skip? Is it the trash?
The skip is a great big, the steel things that you hire when you're like renovating a house, and somebody put it on the screen, dumpster. Oh, I love this. This is magic. Dumpster. Yeah. So we have a lot of that kind of backward and forth with the copy editors, and I mean it can get quite funny because they can completely misinterpret. There was one. It was quite sexual in nature. I won't share it, but there was a definite misinterpretation of something I wrote, and I was like, no, that's not what I meant. Is that what you mean by that?
That's just too great. Okay. I wanted to ask you, so when you tour in the United States, like, is it fun for you? Like, how do you feel about the United States? Because you've obviously...
I always have the best time in the United States. I mean, there's such variety, I don't know, we feel very, very small in comparison, which seems such a cliche. Obviously you're a great big place, but the kind of the breadth and the excitement of going from city to city and different terrains, different weather, different people, different accents. And as I say, the feeling that you're connecting, even though we kind of live so far away from each other, I've always had the best time. I'm really grateful for all the support I've had from the States, and I've had some of my best ever tours, so much fun. And actually, when I start off, I'm always a little bit jet lagged, and then I get into my stride and I'm like, I could keep going for a month. This is amazing.
Okay.
I do have a good time.
Tell me, what kind of things do you like to read? Like who you're reading Elin Hilderbrand now. That's a good choice. What else do you like to read?
It's a good choice. I found Elin Hilderbrand works super well. Talk about escapism. Oh, wow. Sunshine, right? I'm also reading the new Jodi Picoult. I think she's fantastic, and I've just started her new book there. I read books that you might say are kind of similar to mine, like Jenny Colgan and Jojo Moyes, who are in fact both friends of mine, so that's really nice. And then I go back in time quite a lot. So if I need comfort reads, I'll go to Agatha Christie or P.G. Wodehouse, those kinds of, just sort of, again, it's a different kind of escape, isn't it? It's like you go out of today and you go into maybe a gentler time. So it's difficult for me though. When I'm writing a book, I tend not to read very much because I'm such a parrot. I pick up a voice that I'm reading and I start to put it into my own work, and that's no good. So I have to kind of go a bit cold turkey. I don't know if you find the same.
I don't. So I read all the time. Like I read all the time, and I'm always writing. But what I do find, like, I don't read beach books. So I read, I just finished a book by Maggie O'Farrell called Hamnet, which, oh my goodness, it was my #1 book of the year. It was so incredible. And it's about Shakespeare's son dying of the plague, which I don't like Shakespeare. I do not like historical fiction. And I sure as heck did not want to read about the plague. Despite all that, it was just absolutely the best book I've ever read. It was so gorgeous. But I find like reading really like literary fiction, which is what I read, I think elevates my work, which is, I'm trying always just to put out a better product. So I read all the time. The other thing I find really helpful, and I don't know if you do this, is I binge television on my computer, like really good, well-written TV shows. I binge them on my computer. And do you do that as well?
Oh yeah. I mean, I tell you, I binged on Succession, which
me too.
I thought was just stunning, absolutely stunning. So clever, so many twists, the characters, the plot, everything was just so inspiring. And the music, actually, which is not really related to writing, but that music was just phenomenal. It kind of gets in your head. I feel like I could watch that probably about 5 times over and still learn from it, gain from it, and enjoy it. And it is like kind of, it's such a similar art form. It's telling stories, and especially over these long epic TV series, it can be sort of really similar to one of those big fat novels.
I agree. And I feel like it used to be, like when I was growing up, they used to have miniseries, right? And it was like, Herman Walk, The Winds of War, whatever. And that would be on television and my mother would watch it and I had no interest. But then when you heard miniseries, you kind of had like a weird feeling about it. But now like TV is having its golden era, I think, and so that it's become quite literary and it's become more like reading a novel, and especially since a lot of it is on the streaming platform, so there's no, you can put on whatever you want, and it's not as sort of cookie cutter as it was when it was on network. But I really find, binging. I watched a British show called I May Destroy You. I just finished that, and it was very powerful, but so well written. So I feel like TV has really elevated itself.
Yeah. Yes. And if you're someone who loves plot, watching something like, I don't know, Line of Duty and just following these twists, it's like an adrenaline rush. And then of course, the fact that you can now download the whole lot, nobody has to wait. We're all just so impatient.
It's a game changer. It is a total game changer. Okay, Sophie, I'm going to go to the questions because literally the middle of the night where you are. Okay, so the question is, so one question from Michael is, what was the song that your husband sang that caught your attention?
Oh, it was Short People by Randy Newman. There you go. Which, I mean, it was not a love song. It wasn't something slushy and beautiful. It was like a comedic song. Randy Newman, genius. You wouldn't say if you were aiming for somebody to fall in love with you, that is what you would pick. So it shows it was the voice.
I really love that song. Okay. Heather asks, which Shopaholic book is your favorite? And who is your favorite character?
Oh, this is too cruel. Okay, so it is a bit like my babies. And funnily enough, I've been asked this a lot, and I've always said the first Shopaholic, just because it's where I met Becky, created Becky, that's where it all began. I would say that I'm really very fond of Christmas Shopaholic, which is the latest. And I think because I've never written a full-out Christmas book before, and I love Christmas, and I've always half wanted to write one of those gorgeous Christmas movies. I just love them, the sweaters and the snow, and everybody kind of finds resolution at the end, and it's so heartwarming. And I try to put a bit of that into Christmas Shopaholic. So it was the two things I loved the most. It was Shopaholic and it was Christmas. In terms of which character do I love the best? I mean, it has to be Becky because I live and breathe her. But I love them all. I really do. I love them all.
That's awesome. Okay, someone is asking, Megan is asking, are there any more movies based on your stories in the works?
Well, possibly there are. I mean, I should mention that Can You Keep a Secret was also turned into a movie last year. And I think there are various ones which are sort of in various pipelines. There's nothing I can really tell you specifically, but watch this space.
That is a very good answer. Okay, sorry, I am still rolling through the questions. Sorry, guys. Okay, Sophie, can you give us an example of a book that you stalled on?
Okay, this is a bit of a confession, but so is this one that I've read and have stalled on, or I can tell you one that I've read and stalled on, and then
Okay.
Yeah. Vanity Fair. I know Vanity Fair is a classic, and we're all, and in fact it has a heroine called Becky, and I should completely relate to Vanity Fair. I don't know why, I just never got on with it. And you just try, and then you think, no, there's something wrong with me. Why am I not enjoying this book? I'll try again, and I'll try again. And in the end, I just thought, no, it's not for me. So I don't know, am I missing something? I must have a chip missing in my head. I did not get on with Vanity Fair.
I liked it because, Becky is she also really gets kind of a raw deal. I mean, things are very dire for her. I hated Moby Dick. I hated it, and I live on Nantucket. And so, that is just not a popular thing to say because it's partially set on. hated Moby Dick. So if anybody else hated Moby Dick, people are saying you could write a Hallmark Christmas movie, which you absolutely could. And you should.
I'm so there. Okay, this is my new plan. Honestly, the day I discovered that they have a dedicated channel for Christmas movies, I was just so happy.
Oh my gosh. It's going to start, it probably starts the day after Thanksgiving. The day after Halloween, I should say. Do you think you do a COVID storyline?
Interesting. So my reaction when we were in the first pandemic was actually to write about it. And I wrote, but I didn't write a book. I wrote very small little Shopaholic in lockdown, little diary pieces that I just put out on the internet just as a gift for my readers, just to cheer everybody up. So they didn't turn into a novel. And the book I'm working on at the moment, I don't think will be COVID related. For me, I don't feel I know how this is panning out well enough to be able to have my own take on it yet. I feel I'm in the middle of the story, and I'm hoping that the end is going to be coming before too long, and then I can I can process it and have my reaction to it, and then think about whether I want to write it. But at the moment, it just feels, I think there are elements to do with the pandemic and our response to it. I think we've all learned something about human nature and families and loss, and there are themes, I think, which will come through in everybody's work that is just going to be, we have absorbed by being in this strange time. But I think that could come out in ways that aren't necessarily the book about the pandemic. It was fun to write the Shopaholic lockdown diaries though, because it was just so immediate. It was like what we're all doing. You know, I could make a reference to Tiger King or whatever, and everybody got it, and that was kind of fun, you know. So I do like to reflect the world, but as I say, we're kind of in the middle of this. Where does it end? How about you though? Are you going to do that?
Well, I have I mean, I have a novel coming out that is set in the summer of 21, and I'm not mentioning COVID at all, because the way I felt about it is you either have to go all in. In other words, if you're going to write a COVID era novel, it has to be the subject, and I have no interest in writing about COVID. I may, and like, I feel like the same as you, is like, I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen. I had this sort of idea of revisiting La Boheme, revisiting Rent, which is based on La Boheme, and only having the plague be COVID, and having like young characters on Nantucket, like dealing with it. But if I do, you know, and then I'm thinking, do I even want to read that? Like, I always have to, I always think, and you probably do too, what do I want to read about? Like, I don't know.
Absolutely. That's my guiding principle. What would I pick up? I walk into a bookshop, what book do I want to see and what do I pick up? And that's what I'll write. So absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm thinking probably a no on the COVID. Okay. Should we take one or two more? Let's see here. What inspired you to become, we already talked about this. You talked about how you were doing your pension journalism, for anybody who missed this. And Joellen asks, what is your writing process? How long per day do you write?
That depends. I don't really do it by hours. So I plan, as I said before, I plan. And I call that the coffee shop stage, actually, because I kind of go and sit in coffee shops, which I count as legitimate work, and just kind of wait for the book to fall into place. And then I get into the writing stage. And then I'm really impatient, because the minute I start writing the book, I want to know how it turns out. So I aim for 1,000 words a day. And so however long I take depends on how quickly I write those words. And I might go beyond 1,000, but I always try to at least reach 1,000. And sometimes I've done that by 11 and I carry on, or I do something else. And sometimes I'm still sitting there grimly at 6 o'clock going, damn, where are these words? But that's my regime, because you know what? If you write 1,000 words a day for enough days, you have a book. That's maths. So that's kind of my theory.
That is absolutely true. I had a very, very interesting conversation with John Grisham yesterday. And he said exactly the same thing. He says he writes 1,000 words as a minimum, and then he tries to get to 2,000 words. And he says, if you write 2,000 words, he works for 6 months on a book. He says, you will have a book if you write 2,000 words a day, which is true. What I do is I compose for 3 hours. And if you compose for 3 hours, you will have a book. You will, in fact, in my case, 2 books in a year. But one thing we can agree on, it's a lot of work. It's a lot harder to write a book than anybody can possibly imagine.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. More people should know this.
Hard work. And it's not like, I mean, we're also very privileged because we get to do what we love, and we get to do it at home, and we don't have a boss, and we don't have to report to a cubicle. So we are very, very, very lucky, but it haunts you. I mean, I'm sure, you've definitely stayed up nights just freaking out about your book. I know I have many, many, many nights.
It's the worst feeling when you suddenly think, wait, is that going to work? Or no, I didn't think, oh no, plot hole, what am I going to do? It's just the worst. And you just have to think, I will fix this. It will be fixed. It will. You just have to, that's where you need a bit of steel to kind of think, it's not an option for it not to work. It has to work.
Yeah. Discipline and self-confidence, 2 things that you probably wouldn't even think of that you need as a writer. You think you need like inspiration. No, you don't need inspiration. I mean, you do sort of, but it's so much less important than discipline and self-confidence to think, you know what, if you don't work it out now, you're going to work it out down the road. Okay, so we have one last question, and it is, who are Which British writers would you recommend that aren't well known in the United States? And I also would love to know the answer to this question.
Oh my goodness. Well, do you know? Well, I was going to say Lisa Jewell, who writes. She used to write more kind of the sort of what are you going to say? Romantic comedies, light fiction, and then she has taken a turn and gone into psychological thrillers. And they are, but I mean, I don't know, I think she is well known in the States, but I'm going to say her anyway, just in case, people who are watching don't know her. But I recommend all her recent books are just, she's always done description well, and now her plots are twisty and turny and gripping, and so I really recommend that that you read Lisa Jewell. She's really, really great. And I mean, I said before that I read kind of lighter books, but I do read her thrillers, and some of them they can have subject matter which is like families or children in peril, or subjects that make me actually feel a bit kind of twitchy. And she's a friend of mine, full disclosure, and I was about to read one of her books and there was a missing child, and I was like, am I going to be okay reading this? Because I'm quite nervous, because I really don't like reading like books where children, and she was like, I think you'll be okay. So she kind of talked me through it because I have a kind of tolerance. I like to be tantalized, and I like to be a little bit scared, and I like to be shocked, but not too much. So she, for me, is like your perfect level of twist and darkness, but you can still sleep at night.
Yes, exactly. That is a great answer. Okay. I think we're good. I don't know. Is our friendly host going to come back on? There she is. Hi, Bree.
Hi. Thank you so much. That just made me feel so warm and fuzzy, and just like reminded me how important this kind of literature is, especially in 2020.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so. I mean, really, we all need to be cheered up. We do. Oh, look, should I do that too? Thank you for supporting my book.
Thank you both.
Love your life. It is so delightful, such a bomb. Exactly what we need. If you're in the United States, and you probably are, we need it this week for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Thank you both so much. And thank you to our audience. Those are some really, really great questions. And if you want to go to brooklinebooksmith.com/events, you can find out about our upcoming events.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everybody who came. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.